it's Ashley. Today I have a fun floating sentiment slimline card that I will be making. For this, I will be using the Slimline Wide Heart Trio die. I will also be using these two underwater stamp sets, which are the Turtly Awesome stamp and die set and the Shark Bait stamp and die set. So I've gone ahead and die cut out my card panel, and then I've also gone ahead and stamped, die cut out, and colored all of my images. And this sub one is missing you sentiment is going to be my floating sentiment. It's also going to double as a spinner, and you'll see how I will do that later. So next I'm going to pull out my card base, and I want this to be a see-through window. So what I'm going to do is tape this down just so it doesn't shift, and I'm going to just sketch in all three of those hearts, and I'm going to fussy cut them out. This will give me a window into the card so it looks like that sentiment is floating. And then I'm also going to do a lot of my scene building on the inside, so then when you open the card you'll see just some images that you wouldn't see from the outside, just to kind of give it some more interest. So now I'm just taking the sharp scissors I have, poking a hole, and then just fussy cutting all three of these out. It doesn't have to be too pretty. You just want to make sure that the hearts are just slightly larger than the hearts on the panel, so you don't see any of the inside paper peeking through from the outside. So now you can kind of see how it's starting to come together, and the floating part, the string for that is going to go in between these two layers so you don't see that. I'm going to do my scene building on the inside, like I said, and then you'll kind of see parts of it peeking through, and then I'll add some additional stamped images on the inside that you can't see from the outside. Next, I'm going to ink blend the background using Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock Feathers. I'm going to use my Trinity Stamps blending brushes to do this. Now, this paper that I'm using is a Nina Solar White paper. I typically use Bristol Smooth just because I get a smoother blend. So you'll see, for me anyways, it's a little bit choppy on my first layer, and I go through and do a second layer, and then it looks just the same as it would on Bristol Smooth. I laid some more tape down just so I could get a crisp line and not have it bleed up into the back side of that card base. So I'm just kind of dividing this background into 4 parts, doing 2 parts of it one shade and 2 parts of it the other shade, and then blending the lines between the 2 different shades together so it looks nice and smooth like you can see here. When I'm done with that, I'm going to come in with my mister and go ahead and mist the background. I love how that just gives it kind of a bubbly underwater look. And I always make sure to dry in between layers, especially if I'm doing a couple layers of water, just so I don't overload the paper, especially when I'm using this Nina Solar White. Next, I decided to add some shimmer, so I'm using my Gonzai Tombi Starry colors, and this one is called White Gold, and I just went ahead and spritzed my water right into that because I didn't have a bucket or a jar or anything, and then I'm just tapping it on my finger to get a nice splatter all over. Alright, so now I'm going to take that tape off, and you can see that beautiful shimmer. I really like using this too on underwater scenes. So now I'm going to go ahead and start doing my scene building. And what I want to do first is just kind of picture where things will be peeking out. So I'm going to tape that down again just so it stays put and kind of place things where I think I want them to be peeking out. Now the center one I'm going to reserve for my sentiment, so I'm going to leave that one mostly alone. I don't want anything straight behind it just because I think it looks too busy then. By the way, to color in all these images, I used my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, just so it gave it a more watercolory feel. Once I have all of my images where I want them to be, I'm going to go ahead and glue it down. And all of that, like seaweed and rocks and coral at the bottom, you won't see when the card is closed. So I think that's really fun that you get kind of an extra look when it's opened up. Next, I went ahead and ink blended in my card panel, and I did this in the same way as I did for the card base. I didn't know at first what I was going to do with this panel, so that's why I left it till this point. If I knew I was going to ink blend it, I probably would have done it at the same time as the other one. So next I am coming in with some of this monofilament fishing line, just some clear thread, and measuring it out so it's longer than my card panel, and then cutting that down. And that is what is going to make my sentiment be floating. So I have my two stamped out sentiments here laid the correct direction, and I'm just going to lay down a whole bunch of glue, and I'm going to take my fishing line, center that in the middle of the sentiment, and also making sure I have about half of the string on top and bottom so I can kind of secure that into my card base. Then I'm just going to hold that and make sure it's adhered really good and that my fishing line won't slide out. While I let that dry, I'm going to come back in with my card base here. So the other side of this is where my scene is, but I don't want any of the white showing through when I put my card panel on top of this. So I'm just taking the extra ink that was already on my blending brush and just blending that in to the corners there so no white shows through. It would be the same thing as like fussy cutting an image out and then using a black marker on the edges just to give it a clean finished look. All right, now it's time to adhere our floating sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my card base flat and get my card panel ready. So I'm going to make sure that this is all centered in here by just using a little bit of tape runner on the top and the bottom, right up to the corners. And I'm going to lay my sentiment down and just push it down. I'm going to be adhering it better in a moment. I want to make sure that it will spin. So I'm going to test that too. If you don't want it to spin, you don't need to worry about this, but I just want to make sure it's not going to hit any edges. So now I'm going to come in with some Scotch tape right up to the corners and really push it down all around the string so it stays secure. After I do that, I'm going, since I can't really tuck this string under anywhere, I'm going to pull it to the side. I'm going to do the same thing, put a little tape runner down, put it down, and then put some Scotch tape on top. That just gives it a little bit more adhesion to the card and helps it be a little bit more secure, especially if somebody's going to be, wanting to spin it a lot and things like that. Next, I decided I wanted to pop up my panel a little bit, so I put some foam adhesive on that and then laid it on top. That is not necessary. You can have this panel be flat up against that. It won't affect it at all, but I just wanted to give it a little bit more dimension. All right, so I thought about stopping there, but then I decided I wanted to add some more stamped images to the outside. So I added a little bit more. I am going to cut off the little parts that hang off of the narwhal and that manta ray, and just so it fits in a card nice and easily. You could leave that if you wanted to, and I thought it was really cute, but I decided to trim those off. And that's what our card looks like. So here's kind of how you charge it. You just keep spinning it and spinning it. And, if you were to make a spinner card, if you use a larger image, it will have a little bit more momentum and spin a little bit faster. And I didn't spin it that much for this video, but that is how you do it. You just spin it, spin it, spin it, lay it flat, so then when the recipient gets it and they open it up, it spins. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Trinity Stamps YouTube page, along with our Facebook group, Imagination, Inspiration, and Conversation, for lots of crafty fun. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Have a great day.